Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Startup to Success. This is episode 3. If you hadn't had a chance yet, you want to go back and watch episode 1 and 2. The first episode, we got into a lot of the why around starting a business. The second episode, we talked about layers of management. In this episode, I'm super excited to dive in. I am Bobby Holland. I'm with bippermedia.com here in Athens, and
Matt Dipalma. Great to be here again.
Awesome. And as you heard from the other episodes, the purpose of this is, you have Matt, for example, who has started multiple businesses from scratch, from the ground up to extremely successful levels. I have started our business literally from the ground up to where we are today. And our whole point and our whole purpose is to ultimately encourage people who are watching, not just encourage, but inspire with our stories. So that's why we're doing what we're doing. And again, thank you so much for tuning in. So Matt, you feeling good?
Great, man. Great. Now that the Dodgers won, the Yankees lost. I mean,
I don't want to get into it. I've thrown enough chairs across the room. I'm good now.
Well, it's just another thing of leading into the topic that we're going to discuss today.
That's right.
There you go.
That's why I was asking if you were feeling good, because the topic we're talking about today is failure. Maybe we should get the Yankees first baseman in here to talk a little bit.
Well, as you said,
I digress. So with that in mind, failure is a it's a topic that most people don't want to talk about, or a lot of I don't know what you call them, like success gurus or whatever. They'll spend a lot of time talking about highlights of things, but as Matt and I know, and as you as a business owner know, failure, and more so how you respond to failure, is a very real scenario. It's a very big reality in the path to anyone's success, no matter where you are in business. So with that being said,
I think failure is one of the greatest topics that you need to be aware of, because everybody, like Bobby was just saying, everybody talks about the highlights and everything, but you learn more about your business from your failures than you do from your highlights, by far. And it's becoming more popular the more you look around and watch other podcasts or shows and stuff. People talk about their failures more than they do about their success, because the failure ultimately is what drives you to be successful. Is what I have started to learn more. And like you said, in the early years, you don't want to fail. Nobody wants to fail. But let's be real. I mean, we're human. We're just simple guys that started something from nothing. Yeah. It's not like we had a playbook. It wasn't like we had people to help us along the way that could say, no, don't do that, or do this. I mean, you're second guessing yourself. Like we were talking about, Bobby and I were having a little round table before this and everything about, getting hyper focused on things. You miss things from time to time. You get so into reading into something that you actually lose track of what's going on and all. And failure, to me now, I think is a great thing. I don't want it to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But what I tell my team now is, okay, what did we do wrong? And don't tell me you're sorry. Come to me and tell me, hey, we messed up. We failed at this, but we already figured out the solution. And that has been the greatest thing that I think that I have evolved and learned more and more over the last couple of years, especially growing my businesses, having a team of that nature. Every business has failure, but I really feel like we still learn every day. Still learn from contracts, from dealing with people, from failing, and there's, like I said, there's so many ways to fail. And you just have to understand that you have to brush yourself off. You're going to take it in the teeth. If you think you're not going to take it in the teeth, you're wrong. Yeah. You're completely wrong, because It's just the way, it's a part of the business. But you're absolutely right. If you're not changing
right.
and following the online, like Bipper
Right.
Media and all.
If you would have held on to the phone book.
Yeah, I'd be dead in the water.
Exactly.
So
Matt, you've started 2 successful businesses, literally from the ground up.
Yep.
So there's probably a lot of stories that you could pull from either one of those. But just in this episode, us talking.
One of our first very large projects, hundreds of thousands of dollars for a new subdivision. Okay. And it's one of those things that when you do have a failure in life, and it's a big one, you never forget it. It's like watching your kid do something crazy when they were little. I mean, you're just never going to forget the details. So we had paperwork, everything was in order, started working. So in this project, you get a draw. You get a payment upon a certain piece of the project. So paperwork in our bill, got our draw. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of work. So there was a lot of custom material, a lot of material that we had to pre-buy. When we got to the third one, they said, we didn't get your paperwork in correctly to the bank. Just keep going. So then when we got to the third one and we still hadn't been paid on the first and second one, I should have stopped. We were moving, and then we were out there one day, and they didn't even come out and tell us. They just called us up and said, "Hey, we're sorry to tell you, they're foreclosing on us. We're not going to finish this project, and the $150,000 we will pay you. It may be in small amounts. We're going to make sure, but we're going to communicate with you." I mean, we were still a very young company back then. I mean, this is 2020. We're going into 2025. This is 2006, 2004.
Okay.
I mean, this was a big deal. We had just kind of moved into offices. We were growing at a rapid rate, but still $150,000. The bank wasn't going to give me the money. And my business partner and I, we just got out there and worked. I mean, we made sure that every job that we did, for any money that came in, any revenue, we made sure that we sent money to those vendors a little by little. And this company is a landscape company, and I remember that year we had a terrible snow. And we were in the snow. We're in the snow removal business. I know that's crazy in Georgia, but snow removal business. And I remember my partner and I telling the staff, no, you all stay home tonight. We're going to push snow all night long. And I sat in that Target parking lot and I pushed snow all night long over there. And I remember we took a break, and my partner and I were sitting in the truck just trying to warm up, because back then we were using open station machines, which means the snow and all the weather's coming on you. And he turned to me and goes, "Hey, you got the phone number of this one group that we owed the most amount of money to? They were out of Texas." And he said, "Call that girl Mary and tell her we're working just for you tonight in the middle of the night to do this and everything." But we could have thrown the towel in. We could have given up. But we made sure that we did it. And to this day, that spoke volumes to every vendor everywhere that we've ever worked with. And especially those vendors to this day, they'll tell you straight up that that company may not pay you right on time, but they are going to pay you. We are not going to welch on any money to a vendor and all. And that was I remember telling my parents about it, and my dad was just like, "Well, I guess you're just going to have to tighten your belt, buddy, and figure it out." There's nobody going to come and rescue you. And if you're going to go into business and you think you're going to be able to pick up the phone and have somebody rescue you, don't go into business for yourself. How about you?
So, actually, I could pick a lot to talk about.
Oh, of course,
lot of failures. The one actually not part of Bipper Media was the business I had before. That actually, that failure put it out of business. But I had a real estate investment company before I had Bipper Media. That period,
I learned something new about you every time.
Yeah.
Every time. It's amazing. It's great.
Well, if you remember that period of time.
No, I remember that period of time.
That was when money was very easy, especially in like the subprime mortgage industry.
Yes.
I would just be on a phone with an underwriter, and they wouldn't even run my credit score. They just ask me, "Bobby, what's your credit score?" I just give them a number. You'd be like, "Great, here's $700,000 for the house." Money was that fat. So here goes the real estate investment company. We got up to over $3 million in residential real estate between Florida, Georgia, Texas, all along the way. And I remember it was 2010. Ben Bernanke was the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And he came out, I was watching CNBC that morning. He came out and he said, there are problems in the mortgage industry or whatever, and we're increasing the federal, whatever it is, the federal funds rate by like 1/4 or 0.5%. I remember that morning. And when he said that, the whole secondary mortgage market, and I could be getting some of the dates wrong when not, but that morning, as soon as he said that, it froze. And it was actually the catalyst to the huge recession in the real estate industry falling out.
Right.
Well, I was a poster child of that. And I didn't realize at the time, I actually tried to hold on to it, and I thought we were going to be able to pull ourselves out of it, but the wave was just way too big. Anyway, long story short, we literally filed bankruptcy on that company.
Sure.
And that was a magnificent failure. It was devastated. Like everything that we knew and we did was gone because the whole market froze. And then the whole recession of 2010.
Well, the whole market froze, and then it completely collapsed.
And then it collapsed.
I mean, the whole
so
thing
there was
collapsed.
there was no us
back.
coming out of it.
Right.
So that was the failure.
Right.
But kind of like what you were talking about, these properties that we acquired along the way.
Yeah.
This is going back then. I started learning, kind of teaching myself how to, because we had to get like tenants in them, right, and we would do like lease to own type deals,
lease purchase.
So we'd do lease purchase. So I'd build these little websites for these little properties that I had, right? And I didn't know anything about like the way you build sites back then. Like there was a thing called Yahoo Site Builder.
Right.
I was in it. That doesn't even exist today. But I was building these little sites for these properties, and then there was this thing called Google. Right? It's like, well, got to get found. So those were the things I was kind of doing a little bit, like I was learning that the seeds of that were in that business. And then come to find out when that business failed, and this is back when there was Craigslist, and Craigslist was a big deal.
Craigslist.
I had literally we're bankrupt. So I'm like, what do I have? Well, I was building these little websites and doing a little bit of SEO. Craigslist. Every city I could, and I was burning.
Sure.
They were banning my emails, and I was like SEO website and a little bit of time. Anyway, out of that failure, literally grew into what is now, like our business now is website design and SEO. The seeds of it were in that failure.
From that failure.
As insane as that is.
No,
so
that's not. I mean, that's a great
crazy
story, man. I
yeah.
mean, that's something I had no idea. I mean, that's a great story because.
Yeah.
I mean, and you start talking about things, it's like memory lane there. You know, people listening to this, you probably don't even know what Craigslist is and everything. Or what, I mean, you know.
It's like the phone book,
It's like the yellow pages, right? Talk about the yellow pages in the phone book in the first thing. And then the why, and then, you know, how we came up with the why, but you came with the why because you learned from that, and that's what taught you how to get to that point and to keep going and everything. But again, the failure shows you how to be more attentive. So like now, somebody like for me, if you miss a draw, no, we stop. We're done right here, right now. I don't want to hear paper. Everything is a process, and paperwork is so important, and it is so much more important now.
Yeah,
you'd have to agree than back when we first started.
Yeah.
But you know, when you do fail, and there's so many, like you said, which failure is the biggest one? That's obviously like really imprinted in your mind. Yeah. And the more you fail, you're going to have failures at the end of the day. But I know quite a few people, like you said, that started businesses and they failed. They collapsed because they gave up, or they didn't take their own. They didn't even think about, you know, going to open a restaurant. You need to put up a sign. You don't wait 9 months to put up a sign.
Right.
You know, and then they're like, I just don't understand why I failed. Well, you don't have a sign. Nobody knows you. Nobody can find you. Right. I mean, you know, it's just like, you know, today, if you don't have a website, you can't be in business.
It's like not having a sign.
You might as well just give up and not even have a sign. Yeah. So I think like failure, and you know, for me is also, you know, just trying to, you know, there's so many different levels of failure, like we're talking about. Yeah. And when you get into business and you're starting to grow, getting capital, money is so important to be able to. And I remember when I first started my businesses, people are worried today about 6%, 7%, 8%. When I started my business, the first loan I took was 13% on the money. And I had no credits, nothing like that. And back then I bought my first house, and it was what was called a no-low mortgage. So you would know what that is. It's like you just had to put down a lump sum of money, like more than 20% down, to buy that house. That was based on your credit score and on your business records of I'm a self-made person. So they were taking a chance on me back then, and that was the late 90s, early 2000s, before the chaos that you went into. But you're right, failure is the most powerful thing that can happen to you. But if you don't, I guess say it this way, it's the most powerful thing that can happen to you as long as you learn from it and you keep moving forward. Would you say that?
Yeah. And looking at that failure back then, and I think you even spoke to it, like the failure is inevitable. Like that was inevitable back then. There was no coming out of it, even though I tried. But when I was in it, the day to day, I didn't realize the magnitude of it. But there was no shot of me coming out of that. And I had a wife and I had 4 kids. And so even though that failure happened, failure ultimately wasn't really an option for me, right? Because I'm like an entrepreneur at heart. My wife says I'm 100% unemployable, right? So there is no me going to like apply to work at like a job, whatever.
Yes, sir.
It wouldn't have worked. So
you just have to fix it when you got there.
Exactly. So and this is the lesson. Like in that failure, like here's the things that failed. And literally we do this in our business today, just at a different kind of a paradigm or a different kind of angle to it. But even back then, here's the failure, but what little things can be like kind of peeled off and isolated that maybe there was a little bit of momentum. Because when you're when you fail to that degree, you literally could be at a very granular level.
Right.
Like, is there one little detail in all of it that maybe had a little bit of momentum? And back then for me, it was like, well, actually, I started learning how to build these little one-page sites, and I was starting to figure out SEO, and so I took that and just started running with it. And I think that's an important lesson also in the failures is identifying, sure, these things fail. And, you got to pick yourself back up. And when you do, you got to start looking at the granular details. What are things that did work, right?
Yeah.
That you can start picking out and then taking those and building upon those.
Well, I also think that one of the greatest things that I started to do recently in the last couple of years is when I get to meet with another business owner and everything, it's one of the questions I ask them. What is the greatest? Tell me what your greatest failure is. I don't want to know that you're doing $100 million or $20 million a year. What is the failure? What did you learn from your failures in life, and what knowledge can you pass on to me? Because there's one thing you can't put a price tag on, as you and I have discussed many times, is experience, life experience. What we're talking about here today, what we've been talking about in these podcasts. I mean, what if we wish we had people when we were, and we did kind of have people, but wasn't like this where you could listen to it on the online or anything like that, and go that route. But to find out what people's and to find out what other people have failed at, and then how did they change that from their failure? What did they learn from that specific thing? Mm-hmm. You don't sometimes think that that's going to help you, but there's a lot of times you talk to people today and you talk about that stuff, and something happens to you later on in life, or you could relate to it in a past thing that has happened to you where you've had your own failure, and it comes up, and then you're all of a sudden like, oh, you know what? I think I might take that to heart and work on that and go that direction and all. Yeah. And that seems to change a lot of what happens.
It really does, people love hearing success stories, obviously, but business owners, entrepreneurs, like ourselves, like you said, you literally, it's the number one question you ask people.
It is.
And that really gets back to what I was talking, like when I watched that video by John Maxwell, 3 days of nothing but success stories. And he's like, I can't hear another success story because nobody's talking about failure. He talked about failure, and they couldn't make cassette tapes fast enough because people wanted them.
Well, that's one of the reasons we're doing this, is that we want to be real about our experiences and how we started from nothing, and to show people that you can do anything you put your mind to and everything. And there are people out there that will help you along the way, but not to be afraid to fail and to know, like I said earlier, that you're going to step off the porch. You have to know you're going to become that guy that's, as Bobby says, unemployable, because you're going to make your own success every day. And to push through and everything. And it's a grind. You got to grind. You have to have grit. You got to push no matter when you're tired, you're sick. There's no those days for us and everything, because that's how failure happens. And that's what we learned, is you can't become complacent, things of that nature. Those are all components that lead up to failure. And can really.
And those are, we've talked about big, huge failures. Like, these are big kind of like event failures. But there's also the reality of like micro level failures.
No doubt.
For example, in our business, many times happens on a regular basis. We have an idea about a certain direction or a certain kind of like different angle on how we're doing something. And, I have spent many nights, sleepless nights, building it, running it, it's going to be amazing, only to burn all that kind of midnight oil for like 3 or 4 days. And then 4 days later, actually, it's not a great idea at all. And we got to like kill it, and it's off the table. You can call that what you will, but some might say it's a failure. It's more like a micro failure, but it's kind of the same lessons, because in that, even though you came out, say 4 days later, and you had to kill it and never touch it again, it's completely off the table, all the lessons learned in that micro kind of failure, you're now able to do the same thing. Pick out those valuable things and use those to build upon.
And I think if you're a good entrepreneur and a good business, and you're trying to keep continuously growing, because we've been doing this for a lot of years now. I mean, like you're saying, a micro failure. One of my salespersons just came to me literally yesterday, and it made me think of this. And we have what's called permanent contractual work with one of our companies, and we have what's called non-permanent one-time service. This is the first time in 6 years that he's been with the company that he has not signed a permanent work contract with a client over the last 30 days. So that's considered to us a micro failure. Like, what is the reasoning behind that? But you also have to look at the dynamic of what's going on in the economy right now, the world. People are hurt for money, they're pressed for money. So, with one of my companies, this is lawn maintenance. People are going to be like, I'm not going to spend money on lawn maintenance because it's the winter time, not going to be much to do, this, that, and the other. But it's the first time that he was like, am I doing something wrong? And I thought it was great, the fact that he thought, hey, let's look at what happened over the last 30 days. Is there something that we're doing wrong on our end? We still had a very large closing rate for the month, but it was still considered a failure. And so when you're saying micro failures, that's considered a micro failure. Micro failure can be picking the wrong person on your team, having the wrong employee, and not being quick enough that in your mind, that person's doing 75-80% of what they really need to do. But how good would you be if that person did 100% of what you really needed them to do? We fail. I think that's the number one thing that I hear is people say they fail at the people they hire. They fail at the people they hire because they don't. We get comfortable with somebody doing 80% of what you're expecting of them. That last 20% can really change your entire company at all. So, I mean, like you're saying, a lot of ups, downs, a lot of different levels of failure. And like Bobby was saying, where those are major failures for both of us that you'll remember and everything. But even down to the smaller things is that when you get so busy, you don't realize where you're spending money on certain avenues. And then when there is a pullback in the business or the company and you think, okay, we need to try to be a little conservative, you actually go back and start refocusing your mentality of why are we spending so much money on that one product when if we took a little more time we could have saved some money. Does that make sense?
Yeah 100%.
Like ice. I think I've told you the ice story. Yeah, so ice is like, so when we first started the landscape company, the guys would go to the gas station and we'd have to go write them a check every week for getting bags of ice from the store. Well, after like a couple of months went by, we realized we were spending $900 to $1,000 a month in ice. Just in ice.
Yeah.
So what was the first thing we did? We went and started pricing ice machines. And we bought an ice machine and a bin for $5,000. And yeah, there was an upfront cost, but the long-term cost, the ice machine lasted like 5 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
With very little servicing or anything.
Yeah.
So
you saved tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands of dollars, but you were, again, that would be considered a minor failure in your business if you didn't catch that on the front end.
Yeah. I think, with that story and the thing we're talking about, there's macro failures, but these micro failures, it's really more about, I think, the entrepreneurial mindset. And this might literally be the difference in characteristic between, that say it's 80% in 5 years that fail and the 20% that don't. It might be that characteristic of being willing to work through the process. You know what I mean? And not be completely just like taken out of the game at the first failure.
Right.
Whether it's a macro or a micro level failure.
Well, some people think they're going to make, I think the other thing, when we all went into business, like, oh, I'm going to go business for myself. I'm going to make all this money. I'm not going to have to answer to anybody. Wrong. That is completely wrong, 110%. If you think you're going to do that, then God bless you. But there is no great successful people in this country, I don't care who you read about, that did not have to grind and burn it and burn the candle at both ends, like Bobby's saying, talking and staying up all night long and doing the paperwork and going, and then saying scrap the whole project and everything. In the beginning, you're going to have the most failures of all, and that's one of the reasons people are like, well, I'm just not making all this money and I'm not able to go play golf and I don't take long lunches. No, you're not. No, it's not going to be that way if you're going to be a real entrepreneur that's starting with absolutely nothing. I mean, when you're trying to start a business from nothing, you have to know you're going to fail.
Exactly. Yeah.
Completely.
And you have to have that heart to work through the process. Failure is a definitive part of the process. It's a part of the success equation, if you will.
Big
failure.
Very big part.
And really, in all honesty, it should be looked at from an encouraging perspective, because the micro failures, right? Really, whatever level, it's because of those failures, it's the only way you're going to learn, especially when you have customers, right? Every business has customers, and your business isn't going to grow unless you have something that people want, right? But you're not going to really know exactly what people want unless you're willing to adjust along the way. And in the early days, like you're talking about, that's where the lessons are the hardest, right? Because you think you have this business idea that you think the whole world, it's like you have this next iPhone idea, and then the next morning you wake up and actually nobody wants it. You know what I mean? What do you do? So then you take the next step and you learn, and little by little, right? Step by step. But that's what I'm saying, like, it's actually an idea to embrace, because it's how you learn what your market, what your customers actually want. And that's the positive spin on these micro failures.
I think also having failures in my businesses have made me a better person overall too, for sure, because it calms your temperament down. You realize that you can't control everything. If you're going to be a business owner, there's no way you can control it all and everything. And we still preach it today. I'm okay if a customer calls one of my companies and says, I'm leaving your business because I can't afford to pay for that level of service that I'm getting. And we try to work with the customer, come up with a different level of service or whatever. And some people are just honest about it. But when we get a customer that calls in and says, I'm leaving you because your service was terrible. It was, I called, I tried to give you an opportunity. That's when you have to stop right then and there and analyze that and get to those people and look at that as a business owner. For me, that's what it works for us as a business owner, to take that and look at it very closely and say, how did we fail here? Why? Was it a person? Was it equipment? Was it the way we handled the customer on the phone? And analyzing it, and that's, as business owners, being an entrepreneur, you have to figure those kinds of things out.
Yeah.
And I tell my staff all the time, I'm good. Somebody can't afford us, I'm sorry. I would much rather a customer say, hey, I can't afford this right now, but I'll be back. The service was fantastic. I'd love to leave you a great review. Great.
Yeah.
But the customer calls in and says, I'm out. And we are very big in my companies that if you're not happy with the service, yes, we have paperwork and everything. I'll let you out. I'm not going to hold your feet to the fire. Right. I'm not going to keep. If we failed, then we failed. If we made an opportunity, we were given the opportunity and we were able to fix the problem, and we were able, that's a different story. And we still failed, that's on us. But straight up failure can happen anyway.
Yeah. And the, my wife, not so much anymore, but kind of the earlier days, even when it was just me, but even when more people were added to our team, my wife always referred to it as Bobby's in his black hole, right? And what she refers to is those micro failures or those many nights of things, and then it ultimately is like all basically to waste and whatnot. Like, we are just human, right? We're people, and we're trying to do big things. We're trying to create products and services that the market wants. And here in this country, thankfully, the people don't have to buy your product, right? No. People don't have to hire you or buy your product. But if you create something that's great, people will want to buy it, and that's the challenge. And the micro failures, and this is the difference. The micro failures that happen, and perhaps it's that 80% statistic that they just go out completely. Those micro failures happen, and people take that 100% to heart, and they attribute that to their entire business, to their entire self. And I understand what that's like. I've been in that black hole because my wife literally has a term for it. But you have to find a way. You have to find a way to, stand up from those moments. And like we've been talking about, get the perspective, find friends, find colleagues, find, even like you talked about, literally go to your customers, put all your effort into it, find out what went wrong and what are value points that you can learn from it, and then get out of that black hole and keep stepping forward.
Which
and then the next step.
Easy. Sometimes it's not easy to get out of that hole.
And that's why I'm saying we're human, yeah. You're human, we're human. It's not easy. And sometimes, the majority of the time, I need other people to help me get out of that black hole. But it's just the reality of it. And we are here as examples that it is possible, 100% possible. Matt has built 2 businesses from the ground up, employees and leaders and people all over both of those organizations that are there going side by side him to help him through those micro moments. So you gotta get out of those black holes and get your mind into a place where you can analyze and start identifying the things that you can do better, the things that did work, and start building upon those.
No, it's definitely having great people to help you with those problems, because you're going to have micro failures on a daily basis. You don't want to have them, but they're going to happen. I mean, there's going to be, you can't keep everybody happy. That's just the world we live in, and it's just the way it is. And I say every day, you're going to have somebody complain about something, and when you do a large volume, we do a lot of volume, and we're taking care of thousands and thousands of people a day. When you're doing a large volume, you're going to have somebody that doesn't like the way you did it specifically. And we try to do a little bit better every time we get feedback and everything. And we talk about that in staff meetings and things like that. But again, failure, and that helps you become a better brand, a better company to learn from that. You and I spoke about one of the time before. It's like nobody called us about when we're using you about how come our numbers went down. You're like, oh man, we are totally missing that little piece of the puzzle. Dropping the ball. But it was good. It was a good way to learn.
Yeah, it was good. So, and what I could have done in the context of this conversation, you being a customer could have called me and said that, and it could have thrown me into the black hole, and that's it. The whole world is over, and there's but I didn't.
No.
I appreciate. I mean, we're here talking, right? Still, we're friends. We're talking. But I took
still use
that,
your business.
and he's still with us
Today,
right?
yeah.
So we're learning. But that's a great example.
Well, that's evolving. That's evolving your business.
Evolving.
That's evolving your business every day. Evolving the way you become as a human being. And it's not just about making money. It's about making a better service, a better product, doing something more. But then going back to our team and saying, hey, I talked to a customer and the customer said this, or I love it when customers tell me, hey, that person I spoke to on the phone, if you ever let that person leave your firm, I'm hiring that person because they were so great on the phone and everything. And that's a big part of my business and everything. We'll talk about another topic.
And maybe in the next episode, we can dive further into this. But it just made me realize that, you need to, as an entrepreneur, business owner, you have to leave your pride at the door, right? And that might be the thing that sets people into the black hole and doesn't allow them to come out because they're just too prideful. I can't believe he or she has that perception of my amazing invention or my amazing service. Like when you said it, I can't believe Matt just said, because Matt, he doesn't know the whole world, my business is done. You got to leave your pride at the door. So what that means is there's an element of humility, right? That comes along with it. You have to be open to the suggestions and the criticism. And in order to do that, you have to have an element of humility. And might be a good discussion to get into in our next episode.
I definitely think because there's a lot of levels of
levels.
Humility is a very, very big deal because you can get kicked in the teeth and sometimes you can throw the world at somebody and it's never going to make them happy.
Exactly. Well, I hope this was a great episode. Matt, any closing comments?
No, I mean, I hope anything you guys want to hear from us, or we'd love to get some feedback from any of our listeners. And we'd love for y'all to like and share or tell some people about this podcast because our whole goal really here is just to tell people how it is to become an entrepreneur. And we're not the gurus. Listen, we're not the gurus by any means. We're just telling you real life facts here of how it went for us in the beginning. And we hope that you'll continue to listen to us and keep growing it out with us so that other people that are starting a business will want to hear these things and learn from them and take something away from it because it might make you think of something. So until our next episode.
Yeah, that's it. We'll see you in the next one.